fascinating panel to kick off this afternoon's activities on the topic of future event delivery. Matthew, our CEO, this morning mentioned an event that we used to run called RAID about robotics, AI, IoT, and data. So these topics are sort of very much part of our DNA, and it's great to be able to delve into these issues with some experts, leading experts on some of these areas at Host City 2020. So I'll just hand you over now to the moderator, Fiona Green from Winners FDD, to introduce the panelists. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much indeed to everybody in the audience. We've got a great panel lined up to hear to speak to you today. Ben set us some specific questions that we need to address, and of course we'll be also delving into other areas. Just a reminder to everybody watching that you can ask us questions using the function, the chat function. Please feel free to address any questions there. We don't have as much time as we would like. It's always the way when you're presenting panels as interesting as ours, but we will try and get in as many as we can. Okay, so why don't we start with our first question to one of the panelists, and I'm going to come over to you, Bruno, so please introduce yourself at the same time. One of the things I'm sure the audience is really interested in is how much of a disadvantage you might feel, Paris 2024 might feel, as a result of losing 1 year's preparation time between Tokyo 2020, because normally you'd have 4 years. You've got 3.
Yes, hello Fiona, hello everyone. Thank you very much for your question. So, yes, for sure, I would say usually we go back to the previous edition of the games to observe what's happened and then to start constructing our own edition of the games. With the postponement of Tokyo, we just have, I would say, documents to read, and nothing really is replacing the live event you may find on the field. But let's say on a purely technological point of view, it could be an opportunity. I will explain you why. For instance, we did have to change the plan because some really expert was available because with the freeze of Tokyo, they have, let's say, nothing to do. So we could have them earlier in Paris and then to start analyzing our technology plan, the architecture they have to put in place. And in a way, we could have changed the plan and then accelerating the different action plans. So in fact, we turn into an opportunity, and I would say there is a specific point I would like to highlight on the cybersecurity, for instance. You know that the technology is going so fast, and at the same time, the cyber attackers are very, very clever as well. So having one less year of finding new way of attacking is a kind of opportunity we need to take into account, and we will directly leverage from what Tokyo will put in place to ensure we could just improve the new way of protecting ourselves.
That's a really good point. So as well as thinking about how to optimize information systems, you're also minimizing information systems to avoid the hackers. Great question. I'll come over to you now, please, David, and please feel free to introduce yourself. We're not going to focus a lot on the coronavirus because there are other panels discussing that in greater detail. But you're a supplier and you sign multi-term contracts with all sorts of event owners, and you've no doubt got many contracts for events next year. What sort of pressures are you going to be under? What's the industry going to be under? Because we've had many of our major events now pushed forward into 2021.
Yes, thank you, Fiona. Hello, I'm David Behr, Head of Sales of Aggreko Event Services. So if we look at the postponements, we could say that there are 2 streams we need to look at. The biggest one that has been said a lot today is Tokyo 2020, which has been moved into 21 for the event supplier supply chain and the ones who are involved in Tokyo. And Aggreko has a quite big involvement. It has been a massive shift in everything. Basically, we had to be very flexible with rescheduling the availability of our assets because everything is still in Tokyo, in Japan. On top of that, and I think that's the biggest impact of the postponement for the event suppliers. It's basically for the people, because we try to give our people a road map We know that the events world needs to be a flexible world, and that you're in for flexibility. But the impact for person's life was quite heavy of the postponement. On top of that, what you get if you look at the big majors following Tokyo is that, like Bruno said, you have 1 year less, which means that you basically come into the preparations of the wave of 2022. Not taking in account the ones which are happening also in 2021, but you come in the wave of normally preparations of 2022 major events, and you are still delivering Tokyo. So that's going to be a very big challenge. Next to that, if you look to the other subsectors in events, the music industry, the corporate events industry, the conference industry, a challenge. The problem is that we still don't really know how 2021 or first half of 2021 is going to look. So the challenge is, again, flexibility and what is the mandate of the events industry for the first half of 2021. Because it could all come together, but we could also, if we have a bit of a negative thought, it could also again be cancelled. So we are waiting with a lot of expectations and ready. And I think I can talk for all the event suppliers, ready to go back on the road 2021, but we will have to see basically what COVID is doing. Fiona.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure, as you say, many suppliers are in the same position as you and really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen, as indeed are the rights owners, as indeed are the audience, the spectators, whether those of us who are attending or watching at home. Okay, so Martin, we'd like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, please. And you're here representing the European Championships, for which you're a major supplier. Why don't you give us an overview of what sort of infotech systems you're responsible for on behalf of that event, please?
Hello, Fiona. Thank you. Yeah. So first of all, hello from just outside Glasgow, and it's always a pleasure to be involved in the host city with Glasgow, being a regular supporter of it. I was involved in the 2014 Commonwealth Games, and then shortly after that, I got connected with the European Championships through a bit of luck in a pub in Glasgow. And I was one of the first employees in the European Championships management team. So it's a product I know very well and close to my heart. For Glasgow, for the 28 Championships, I helped them develop their budget and strategy, and kind of navigate and guide them through some of the very complex unifying elements of what's involved in a multi-sport event of that scale. After 2018, I started my own consultancy, to which I'm very happy to say that I'm back with European Championships as their technology consultant. I've also had the opportunity to be involved recently in other projects involving likes of the Olympics and Commonwealth Games and some of Glasgow's other major sport events.
And what sort of, when it comes to your events data ecosystem, Martin, what sort of areas of data are you responsible for at the championships?
So really looking at those which are, like I said, the complex ones that this hosts may not be familiar with them, or suppliers may not be familiar with them, because they're very specific to the multi-sport event environment. So likes of the results data systems to be communicated out, event management systems, which is accreditation, workforce management, these type of systems. Also the television graphics, which has obviously a huge visible impact on a major multi-sport event, and really creates that unifying brand. And then other areas as well, which require very early on planning and careful consideration, which is the backbone of the data network. So in some areas I will advise the host cities on strategy. In other areas I might connect them up with other suppliers who I know have very good capabilities in the area that they need support with.
And certainly on the performance results and the athletes' results and the TV graphics, there's a lot of data there that's necessary for fan engagement. And certainly that's a big area for you, isn't it, Bruno? Getting not just the residents of France and Paris engaged with your activities on the build-up, but also around the world. Tell us a bit more about your approach to that area, the fan engagement ecosystem, please.
Yes, I will answer to that, but maybe I forgot to present myself. Sorry for that. I was so in hurry to answer your question. So I'm the technology director of Paris 2024, and I have the opportunity and the chance to have two careers. So one in the IT world, but I'm three-time Olympian as well, and I have the chance to have two world records in athletics in 200 meters indoors and relay 4x100 meters. So I know the product on one side, and I try to organize the event on the other side now. So I'm very happy to answer to your question now. Yes, I think for Paris 2024, maybe we need to understand one strategy we have is currently this edition of the games have the motto to say you will be actor of the games. What does it mean is we have created one mass event during the Olympic Games. Any people can participate to a marathon during the games, and during the Paralympic game as well. We will open, so it has to be confirmed, but we will open a mass event, a para-cycling event as well. What does it mean in terms of technology, fan engagement? It means that we need to go closer to a new fan community. Usually for the Olympic Games, the major fan community is the one which we will either buy ticket or either watch on television. Here we are addressing a new community, which is the one we want to be part of the game. So we need to engage from now, new action, new activities. We have developed a strong digital program as well. I think you heard about the Club 2024, which is a digital club on the internet where you can register, you can run, you can swim, you can do some events with the final objective is to obtain points to win a ticket or a bib number to participate to the marathon in 2024. So that's why it's a new way to communicate to fans with early engagement to a new fan community. And we are perfectly aligned with the IOC. Usually the IOC is coming to the edition of the game with a strong community of fans, Olympics of the event by itself. In 2 years, in 2022, we need to launch the ticketing system as well with a new community to address. But we all know that all of these major events, they need, let's say, to exist in between two major editions of the games. And we are working closely together to bring this new community, this new behavior of people who would be actors of the games. And I think we are perfectly aligned with the IOC and the OCS on that. So we're working closely with that. On a technology point of view, for instance, we have developed customer identity and access management, a kind of Paris 24 Connect, to really know our customer, understanding their different navigation through all our different digital assets. And we have already started to define a merge plan with the Olympic ID to ensure that we will, by 2024, we just have a single overall and global fan communities with different objectives, different behaviors to ensure that we can address this community. So it's a new way of connecting to the people very early. So it's 4 or 5 years before the event. And then we will enlarge progressively when we open the ticketing and after the edition of Tokyo, when we can merge with a full database of all the different Olympics addicts around the world.
And that's a really valid point there because, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, Bruno,
Go on,
my
Fiona.
video is running a little bit. I beg your pardon, apologies. My video was running a little bit behind. Yeah, that's a really valid point as well, with the Summer Olympics being every 4 years. The longer you can have an engagement program, the better. I'm just going to switch to a question from a member of the audience, Jose, who's asked you, what thoughts have been given, if at all, to the broader and deeper needs of vulnerable people? So people who are slightly more vulnerable than others. When it comes to their engagement with the Olympics. Is that something you've already started addressing, or would you be leaving that till near the time?
Yes, definitely. I think one of the objectives of Paris 24 is really a social objective. So we are watching carefully what's possible to do in terms of communication, as I know that there are some programs to broadcast some images to people. We can't afford to have live images of the Olympic Games. It has already been done, but it's something to be discussed directly with OBS, with providing the Olympic images and the IOC by itself. So I know it's something under discussion. And the other thing is, in terms of technology, there is, I think, and specifically in France, we need to make good progress in terms of accessibility, because I know we need to develop some new facilities for disabled people, and I think the Paralympic is really an opportunity for those population as well. And in terms of social vulnerability, we have a strong position as well, since specifically on technology, we have a strong program to embark people from, would say, some suburb of Paris area with less facility to access to universities, and we are putting in place some strong programs with them to help them. I don't know about cabling, about the basics of the technology, and this is really something we are pushing strong for Paris 2024 as well.
Fantastic. That's a great answer, Jose. I hope you're happy with that answer. So just talking about the different types of data you're generating to understand more about fan engagement. David, let's come over to you and talk about the different types of data you use to predict future event requirements when we're thinking about future-proofing and becoming more sustainable. What sort of analytics do you use? Because you clearly go from event to event to event because of Aggreko's business.
Yes, and we have seen a shift, a positive shift in the last 3 to 5 years in the usage of new technology and mostly data at the supplier side, which brings us a wealth of information. For example, in Aggreko, we have now all our distributed generation assets with data monitoring. They are monitored from a central place somewhere in the world, and this makes us analyzing a lot of data of our clients and our event organizers, and we're able to work with that data now with them on a year-on-year basis to make the event as, between brackets, custom made as possible. So to keep the fat out, to look at it per area, per need, and we make it extra efficient, which I think is in these times is the future for event, is to make it as efficient as possible, and the usage of data and new technology is making that much more easier than before.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so on the point of optimizing and efficiency, Martin, why don't we come over to you and ask your opinion also as a consultant who has access to lots of different environments and lots of different events. What do you recommend for ensuring that you future-proof events in the future and ensure continuous improvement?
David was saying there when he's collecting the data between events, there's definitely been a shift towards developing long-term partnerships with suppliers such as Aggreko who have that experience, because that can be very valuable to the host city. But it's also important to recognise which of those partnerships, which of those systems you would transport from one event to another, because there are certain things that you leave to the host city because they They might be important to the story that the host city wants to tell, or they might be things that a host city knows really well about their own city that you wouldn't. But other areas such as event management systems, the timing and scoring systems, when a host city comes on to and they've never managed or run a big multi-sport event, for example, like the European Championships, Olympic Games, then they will often have an unawareness of some of the complexity of these things, and I think there's an opportunity there to make it easier for the host city by bringing in some of these technologies for them. And I'm sure Bruno, he's at the stage with Paris where they're probably realizing some of the things that they have to develop, and they're questioning if it could have been, they could have just taken it out of the box from a previous games. But it's about understanding what those the items are that will really add value to the host city, but also to demonstrating ways of demonstrating the value to the host city, because it's like a new host city, I think, is very much like a person in the 4 stages of competence, the 4 stages of learning, and it's that bottom part of the pyramid, which is the unconscious incompetence, where there's the biggest opportunities to come in and get value with the host cities.
Absolutely. So I'm going to push you a little bit further on this theme, because it's quite an important one in terms of preparing for an event. How far in advance of either submitting a bid for an event or the event kickoff itself should host cities actually be thinking about their technology ecosystems? How soon in advance should they be looking for someone like Bruno to come on board and help them figure out all of this?
Yeah, well, for me, it's absolutely fundamental that it's right from the outset. But before a host city's picking in a bid, they should be looking at evaluating the implications of the technology, and the reasons are it's the complexity of it is very time consuming. Technology is often the first big complex tenders that a host city will have to tackle, and if they've not done it before, there are many hurdles, like the legal team have maybe never had to run this kind of thing, this type of procurement in a public environment before, public sector procurement environment before, and it can take a lot of time. Then the host cities. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
About how far in advance just thinking about the ecosystems.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is that there's some major dependencies, time dependencies, which also have cost implications. So if you consider, for example, the fiber backbone, the communication backbone of your event, how long is it going to take to get the way leaves to connect up your venues? So yeah, I would, and the budget itself, you're often talking 10% easily of the whole budget for technology, and it's not something that you can just kind of decide what the budget is later when it's that scale. It's something that you need to get locked down early on in the project.
That the answer then is very, very early. So
absolutely.
What about you, David? You're providing a manner of different types of resources across your Aggreko's full offering. How far in advance do you often get brought into a discussion?
Well, it depends of where you are in the world and what culture you are working with. But on a more serious note, I think this, and everybody knows I'm a big believer of this. You need to get the supply chain, the event supply chain in. How more your project event is moving from a conceptual design to an accurate budget and planning exercise. It's only by engaging the supply chain, the event suppliers supply chain, that you bring your ideas to life, and you can see if they are reasonable or not. I see a lot of encouraging signs from event organizers, and I think we need again to divide them in two: the ones which are hold to public money. It's a bit more difficult because all the rules around public money to engage early, but we see some good signs of early engagements, and even some exercises to try to go possibly to multi agreements, which would be beneficial for both the supply chain and the organizer. On the other hand, in the more private funded events, long-term relations are key, and they have always been there. So I think that part we work well year on year, as I said before, with this type of organizers. For the big ones, I think as early as possible. Again, it's about changing from concept to realistic budget and planning phases, and that can only be done with engaging the supply chain.
Take another question from the audience, because we've got Manon, who's asked a great question for you, David. He's asking you, how long will it be before diesel generation will not be used? He's looking for carbon reduction here, and I know that's a subject quite close to your own heart. So how do you feel about that, not using diesel generation and getting to a carbon reduction environment?
Well, I think it's not only close to my heart. The good news is that it's close to a lot of people's heart, and I think let's play it like this, Fiona. Your last question for me would have been what favorite example I have of innovation. Well, I think my favorite example of innovation is since last year. The zero carbon thought and willingness of event organizers have really geared up. We have Bruno here in this panel, which with Paris 2024 has enormous expectations around zero carbon as an event. I think that is innovation which needs to happen and is happening right now. I know that in all categories of event suppliers, innovations around making it more sustainable are happening. A sustainable supply chain. We have just announced that we're going to work on a 10-year plan following the Paris agreements, and we're going to step up and we're gonna step by step, because let's be honest, like Bruno said, with all this technology involved and evolving year after year on big mass events, reliability is obviously key, which means that reliable energy sources are key for the event to happen. And step by step, we're gonna try to work hand in hand with the customers, with the event stakeholders, but you cannot only put all pressure on the energy provider. The technology needs to be there to be able to cope with the demand to start with. Hybrid solutions are already in use now, and we're gonna start to use them more and more. More and more green energy grid is available, but not always. So it is. I think to respond to the question, it is coming. It will take time. Obviously, there are new sources which are being looked at. Hydrogen is one of them, which we are also looking at, but it needs to be feasible on an event. The supply chain needs to be there. And again, the reliability needs to be proven, because the last thing you want is to lose image, technology, security on an event. So it's a balance between all of these things, but it will need a change in mind of the whole supply chain of an event, and it needs to be driven by the top. I mean, you can, if you for example are going for cheaper non-isolated structures, and you need to bring climate control in there, you will produce more energy, which means that you will have again a need of more energy at the start. So it's a whole domino of events which needs to be controlled, and that's why I think coming and to end this subject where I'm passionate about, it's very important to engage early, to look at a multi-venue event or a single venue event as a whole. Don't break it up, because then it's going to be very, very, very difficult to drive your sustainability goals.
I'm not going to drop the subject just yet, because firstly, you've already called out Paris 2024, and Pedro in the audience does have a specific question for you, please, Bruno. He is asking specifically if you've got any plans to use battery power supply for any of the venues or any of the events in Paris. Battery power.
I would say the energy is not specifically under technology areas, but what we are currently doing is to develop some, let's say, green energy. So we are closely working. Our director, I think, Jonina, will participate to a panel later about sustainability, and she's really pushing hard to find new, I would say, green energy, working closely with industries to be ready for Paris 2024. So I think beyond the batteries by themselves is really to understand how is it possible to have some clean energy to use for Paris 2024. So it's really a challenge, but we may have a really good news on this topic.
Your key area, which is the technology, then what big innovation are we likely to see at Paris 2024, please?
Oh, where is my crystal ball? I would say that no, the technology is going so fast that it's not that easy to answer to your question. Let's say, link back to the previous discussion. I would say maybe the major innovation of Paris is to organize a game with sustainable ICT. Because I think, as David say, we really have an objective for neutral carbon, and we all know around the table that technology is a bad guy on this topic, because we are doing a lot of this area. So that's why thinking differently about how technology can contribute to this neutral carbon objective is key, starting from now. That's why we get as much as possible get rid of what we call the overlay, which is to cable everything and then to get back with the cable and to throw them away, which is really a pity to do that. So we need to think differently. And the key innovation, which would be to have a sustainable ICT by the end of the day. But in terms of innovation, we need to separate two groups. The showcase of innovation, we won't run into this race because we have some budget constraints. We know from time to time that now organizing major events need to think differently. So we won't run into this race of showcasing some technologies. Of course, we know that some of our sponsors, private companies, will demonstrate some technology, but I think it's not the duty of the organizing committee to be on that. But we are really aiming what I call useful technology to ensure by the end of the day we are improving efficiency, we are making some savings, or we are bringing added value experience to the people who will come and see the games. And that's why we are really cautious about announcing some technologies in 4 years, because we won't be in the showcase. So if you definitely want to have some clue, we know that the 5G technology will develop. I will see more on a B2B basis, because there's some controversy on the B2C, specifically with the sustainable discussion and things like that. But on a B2B basis for specific services, we know that it will be key. For instance, we aim to get rid of previous walkie-talkies technology to be replaced by push-to-talk technologies to extend the way of communication. I think it will be for tomorrow. We have some, we know we will have more extended use or target use of cloud, and to get rid of data centers as much as possible as well. We are pushing on the 3D usage of augmented reality, but with the objective of to reduce the travel to visit the venues. You can do it remotely and then having some savings to carbon. I talked already about accessibility as well. So you see there's different way of innovation, but with one objective is to find a use case for this technology to be in place, I would say 6 months to 1 year before, to ensure we won't take any risk in terms of delivering the events.
Well, considering you said you weren't going to look into a crystal ball, you gave us a lot of examples of innovation we can look out for at Paris 2024. Thank you very much indeed to my panellists. Thank you to the audience for the questions you gave us. I hope you all enjoyed hearing what our experts had to say. Enjoy the rest of the workshop. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Fiona, and thanks to all of our panellists there. And thanks for crystal ball gazing as well. If you want to hear a bit more about technologies like VR and AR and other digital technologies that are already being deployed at an accelerating rate, then there's another panel about that tomorrow morning called the Digital Acceleration. So we'll go into a bit more detail there. But thanks so much to to Bruno, to David, and all of the panelists there. Thank you so much.